Hi, good afternoon everybody. Back for another Facebook Live, and today I'm going to be sharing something a bit different. So we try to have a bit of a pattern with these lives. Sometimes we'll be talking about, say, certain conditions that we see here in the practice. Sometimes it will be about some general questions we have about chiropractic. And then sometimes it's going to be just generally going about other topics of health, like we were talking more about COVID, especially during the lockdown, and explaining what some of the statistics mean. Today I'm actually going to be talking about a particular type of diet. And I'm talking about this diet because I actually tried this myself fairly recently. It was not last week, it was the week before. It's a 5-day diet, and it's all about the whole process of autophagy in the body. So this is called the fast mimicking diet. Now you may have heard a lot about fasting. It's something, whether it's intermittent fasting or other types of fasting, it has become very popular, especially in the past few years. And the reason for this is because there's a lot of health benefits that come along with fasting, as well as for some people there will be the benefit of, say, losing weight or increasing their energy levels. Fasting as a general is supposed to be based on the idea that we do not need to eat all the time. If you look at the physiology of humans and mankind, previously we would eat in very big amounts in certain times, and then afterwards we'd have these big gaps in between where we would go out and we would, say, move, we would hunt. But of course, as we became more industrialized, things changed, and that's where we started to be more centralized in certain areas. And especially when the whole revolution came in of farming and mass production of certain types of food, now we could have food available to us at all points, and we even started to change the types of food we were having, especially having foods that were, say, maybe softer or much more easy to get to or much higher in carbohydrates. So one of the purposes of fasting is really to try and bring our physiology back to where it was before and where things were more ideal and where it worked better for us. Partly for some people, again, it can be good for weight loss because it helps them to control what they're eating, control their calories, but also it can be very useful just to help to boost other aspects of health as well. You know, if your body is never challenged, it will never get stronger. If you never go to a gym, you're never going to get stronger. And it's the same thing for the body in terms of its efficiency as well and how homeostasis works. If there is no challenge on, say, the amount of food you're eating, the type of food you're eating, or any other stresses in the body, then there is a chance that the body is not going to be as strong going on to the long term, and it's then not going to be as adaptable when a real challenge does come. Say someone doesn't eat for most of the day and they start to get very hangry, as some people would call it. So the difference with this kind of diet is this is not a long-term diet. Something like intermittent fasting is something that can be done on a daily, yearly, monthly basis, however long people want to do it for. Personally, it's something I've actually been doing kind of slightly by accident because I wasn't having breakfast, but then something I'd been inadvertently been doing for the past few years, just because for me I found, especially earlier in the day, it was easy to not have any food at that time, and there's all these health benefits that come with it. However, fast mimicking is a bit different because this is trying to mimic the idea of a true fast. So a true fast would not be where you are eating in certain blocks per 24 hours, say the 16 and 8 is a classic. But instead the idea is it's mimicking the feeling your body would have in the actual physiological change in the body of if you were having no food. And the idea is to do this for around 5 days. That's what it's set out to be. It's all done by a company called Prolong, which is Volta Longo. He's the professor who designed the idea. And he wanted to find a way to make it more palatable for people. Because the idea for some people of taking 5 days and not eating any food seemed like quite the challenge. So instead their way of getting around it was to create this feeling where you don't feel like you're as hungry, you are still eating food, but you mimic the effects by changing the types of food you are having and the physiological effects that those foods would have. So for this particular diet, like I said, it's 5 days long, and the idea is that for the first day you'd have 1100 calories. For the average person, just to let you know, for a woman it's usually around 2000, for a man it's around 2500. So it is a bit of a drop. However, then this is where it gets a bit more extreme, and days 2, 3, 4, and 5 is where you'll be dropping down to 725 calories. Now, of course, like I mentioned, there is Prolon, and they do have a whole meal plan that they set out, and they can send it to people's houses, but this is something where you can DIY this at home. The way to do it is to have a few core principles in terms of foods you are choosing at that time, and of course to make sure, at least for those 5 days, you are counting those calories to make sure you're keeping with this. Because this is not a time to cheat and add, maybe a little extra something here, a little sweet there. That's where it's not going to be as effective and won't have those long-term real kind of benefits for you. So in that time, when you're having those calories, on those days where, like I mentioned, it's either 1100 or 725, it needs to be things which are low in protein and low in carbohydrates, and definitely, of course, no sugar. The reason for this is because those three main groups, which are really just the carbohydrates, sugars, and proteins, is that they're going to be stimulating insulin release within the body. And if you're stimulating insulin, this is where you're going to start to have more change in terms of overall physiology and coming out of that fasted state. So in some extent, you're kind of tricking the body into thinking that it's fasting by having a low amount of calories and by having it things that are not having that same kind of insulin release. But instead, you're giving it other things. Now, of course, you're wondering, what are these other things? Those other things need to be low-calorie, fibrous vegetables. Think of things like, say, spinach, lettuce, carrots, cucumbers, cauliflower, broccoli, all of these things. These are all very fibrous, so you'll still have that fiber to make you feel full, but you're not going to have the calorific intake compared to some other foods, and not that same insulin resilience as well. So by doing this, your body thinks it's in a fasted state, but you don't particularly feel that hungry, or at least not as hungry as you would feel if you hadn't eaten for 5 whole days. And you're still getting some level of vitamins and some level of energy coming in through the body. I can say from my personal experience, like I said, I fast already. It's something I do on a fairly regular basis. But I will say there is a bit of a jump and a bit of a difference with this. The first day is a little bit more difficult, especially me, I'm someone who ate a lot of meat, so for me the lack of protein is quite difficult. But then by the end of the first day, you're a bit tired, but it's not too bad. The second day, again, less tired than the first, and it's getting a little bit easier. Third day starts to feel a bit easier. However, I can say personally, for the 4th and 5th day, it wasn't just things that were easier. This is a point where I actually felt like I had lots of energy. I felt like I wasn't particularly hungry, and I was riding really high. I was very focused, I was able to get a lot of work done, and it was something where it was very productive. And then I ended up, because I was working on Saturday morning here with patients, not eating anything really until around 3 or 4 o'clock on the Saturday. So really taking a bit of an extension onto that. Even at a point where I went to the gym on the Saturday, and again, I was still feeling very strong and still very, very focused. One thing you have to remember while doing something like this, at least in those 5 days, is there cannot be intense exercise. Nothing where you're going to be depleting all of your stores of carbohydrates or glycogen in the body, because then you will not be able to continue this further on, and actually could be potentially damaging or dangerous for you. So it's something with any kind of exercise needs to be very light, whether it's something like light yoga or walking, and you need to make sure, of course, that you are getting the right amount of food in. One thing, of course, very important is rest. Make sure you're getting enough sleep, maybe even doing some stretching if some people do feel and experience some body aches as this happens as well. But otherwise, I'd say it's something that's worth giving a shot. But obviously making sure that you talk with, number one, your doctor or your nutritionist before you do this, just to make sure that it is feasibly safe and good for you. Now, the whole purpose of this goal of this diet is not to lose weight. I must make that very clear. It's not about losing weight. This is all about trying to improve the autophagy of the body. So it's a word I mentioned earlier, and I should explain. Autophagy is the way that your body gets rid of cells. All of the cells in your body, every single one, they are not the same ones that you had 15 to 20 years ago. Everything has changed. One way to think of it is like the hairs on your head. Over time, the hairs will fall out, but they will grow back. And you want the new ones to grow back healthier as possible. You don't want them to be growing back, maybe say where they're grey or they're twisted or they have split ends or something else. And same for all those cells in the body. We want to get rid of the old ones as efficiently and as best as possible. Because if we don't, then we end up with ones which might start to cause problems in the body. They may start to cause abnormalities. They may even start to produce some level of cancerous cells when they're not splitting and not being deleted from the body essentially in the most efficient way. So what this is doing is, because your body goes into this semi-starving fasted state, it starts to work more efficiently. It starts to see this as, okay, there's not as much food available. Let's start to get rid of things better. Let's start to do things more efficiently. Let's start to produce energy more cleanly, in a sense, within the body. And that's one of the big things of autophagy. So this is something where it's tried to be more of a boost to the immune system. I mean, I'm not a big one when people talk about the idea of a detox or a boost. There is a lot of science showing that you are detoxing and boosting all the time, essentially. But what this really is doing is giving more of that kickstart to your immune system in a way that a lot of other diets would not. And it does it a lot faster than doing something like intermittent fasting, which is useful, but would take weeks and months to try and produce the same kind of results. So it's something I think is very much worth looking into. In terms of the way to do this, of course, it is those 5-day splits, and it should not be done continually. So it's not something where you should be doing it more than those 5 days or doing this every single week and just say having the weekends. But really, at the most, you should be doing this once per month. But really, that's for somebody who is quite unhealthy and maybe someone who's obese or has diabetes. And again, that's only with them already talking to their doctor so they can confirm that this would be something okay for their particular health and their particular condition. However, if you're someone a bit healthier, say you're fairly active, then you can do this once every 3 to 4 months. If you are someone who is quite active, quite healthy, maybe someone who's a bit younger, then even just doing this once every 6 months. You know, it's, when you think about it, taking 5 days, this is taking your Monday to Friday, and you can still go out and have dinner with your friends or your family on the weekend. It's not that big a change, but it can have a big impact on your overall health and improving things for the future as well. If you have any questions, of course, you can always let me know. You can put them in the comments, or you can drop us a message at 8438-9550, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about the diet or any experience or any other resources that you might want. Have a good day, everyone.